All right, Grand Rising, everyone. This is Ron. It's December 27th, a little after 10 a.m., Saturday, December 27th. And let's see if we have any questions. Anyone? Um, Let me say this. Pastor and Regina were just having a discussion. I think most of us heard it. Talk to us a minute. Give us some insight into Kwanzaa. How beneficial do you think it is to us, or where are we as a people there? Anybody?
Kwanzaa,
The spirituality of it.
philosophy slash history teacher uh, at I think it's University of California, Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
Um, to replace Christmas for us, he wrote uh, um, an essay or thesis about the advantages of embracing our cultural what?
Awareness, maybe?
Yeah, that's it. And cultural unity
Okay.
um, by having dealing with the 7 last days of the month and assigning an aspect of our life, of our culture to that. And and he did it for 7 days for because of seven spoke to completion. Um, what does the Ron say about that? See, this I'm remembering because it started back in my day,
Okay.
and he he set that into motion at a time when no one would even pay it any attention except those of us who are in the movement. And when I say movement, I'm not talking about civil rights. That's a whole different. That's a whole different movement. Those of us who are in the movement, and for that, he got uh, castigated, and he became an outcast, especially to the black church, because of the perceived disrespect for the birth of Jesus, when in essence it had nothing to do with that at all. It simply replaced Christmas for us. And there were very few people around the country, especially in the South, who even heard of Kwanzaa. And those who had heard of it were afraid to celebrate it. I remember distinctively the first year that I had moved back from Washington, um, we had Kwanzaa at the church that I came out of at St. Paul, and that was because I was able to talk to the pastor about it, and he said, "Let's do it," even though he didn't know what it was. But after we did it there, uh, most of the people were interested in it, and then it waned as it went on. So now there are Kwanzaa celebrations in the community because it began to grow again after Juneteenth, when
Yeah.
Juneteenth became a celebration for the whole city, the whole county actually. That's when Kwanzaa began. People began to question and look at Kwanzaa all over again. But as far as the dates and stuff, I don't remember all that. But the principles, the seven black principles,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I remember those. And by the way, all of it is in Swahili.
Thank you. For anybody just joining us, I asked Pastor to go give us a brief overview of Kwanzaa, what that means. He and Regina were having a greeting about that. And I thought nice way to start the discussion. So anybody else any questions or any insight into Kwanzaa, any of your experiences before we move on?
This is Vermel.
Hey,
I have a question for Pastor. I might have missed what he just said.
okay.
The 7 days, um, were they concepts you said for each day?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Are those related? Do they tie into the Mayat concepts?
No, they do, but not. How can I put this? They do for people who understood Kemet
Okay.
in relationship to Swahili, the language Kiswahili, because Swahili was the trade language,
Mm-hmm.
and back then there was a difference. The people who were deep into the movement understood the connection between Kemet and Kwanzaa.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nate, I speak from a child of, I guess, that era.
Uh,
In that time period that you talked about, bringing things back to the South. Distinctly remember when we were exposed to Kwanzaa. I was in fourth grade, and it was 1990 here in Georgetown. And it was at a time when we had the Committee for African American History and Observance here. And folks like Ruby Dee and Ozzie Davis and Maya Angelou were brought to the community, at different times, just these Black oligarchs, right? So there was an awakening here in the community, and that seed was planted in me. And honestly, my family has acknowledged Kwanzaa since that time. We never saw it as a replacement for Christmas. Um, but the principles were different, like every day getting together and understanding and learning what that word meant. And really, when it was a community celebration, the community actually discussed ways, for example, Kujichagulia, which is self-determination today, we would get together and discuss what that meant in kid groups, women groups, and men groups, and then come together and, have a meal or whatever afterwards. But now, like I said, that seed is planted in me, so I've never really seen it as anything but what it is, like a grounding and being part of the diaspora. Um, so that's just my thought.
okay. It's called the Nguza Saba Seven Principles. Begin with Umoja, which means unity. And you will light a candle each day for each principle. Do you guys do that, Regina?
Yes, sir. My mother has had the same Kanara since the 90s, and is actually on her table now. I'm here at the house with her, and I have my own Kanara as well.
Okay.
And like you said, like there's the black, red, and green candles, and every day you light the candle, you state the principle, and there's usually a recitation of what, again, everyone's sharing what that means.
Right.
And I guess the other side is that no, it was something that we did and we did in Black consciousness, but it wasn't a greater discussion outside of the Black community. Now it is.
Yeah. Kwanzaa speaks to first fruits. And during the period of Kwanzaa, the first fruit was the new harvest. And it was not a harvest in terms of physicality, but the principles renewed us, just like the sun stops, and on the 25th it begins north again, uh, which is a renewal. And in Guzasaba, um, were principles of renewal and principles. It was a cultural effort to reconnect us to the motherland, as we termed it back then. So that was started in 66, 65, 66. Because that was the period when African nationalism took root in this country for real, for real. Prior to that, it was the Civil Rights Movement. From the 50s forward, it's the Civil Rights Movement. And when we began to shut down schools in protest of not having black studies in the schools, and the more we got Black history in colleges and universities during that period, the stronger African nationalism or Black nationalism took root in this country. And there were people like Jesse Jackson who spoke against it in the beginning. And I remember the first time we started talking about we are African Americans before we got to the point of saying we're Africans in America. When we were saying we were African Americans, Jesse was saying, no, we are Black Americans. He had graduated from Negro to Black. And then when it got popular, Jesse made a statement in a speech and mentioned that we are African Americans. And that's how he was credited with being the first one to call us African Americans. However, if there were some guys who spoke on stages or to crowds just as larger than Jesse, but the difference was Jesse was safe. It was safe for him to speak because he was not. And I know this is being recorded, and I really don't care because it's the truth. Because he was not as adamant about our being liberated. He was not as adamant about supporting the ANC in South Africa as we were. But when it got popular, that's when he started using the term African American. Our history is very convoluted when it comes to those who were safe for white people. And he was safe for white people. And this Rainbow Coalition, how many of you have heard of Jesse's breakfast program in New York from the Rainbow Coalition? That whole scenario of Jesse starting a breakfast program in New York was the biggest lie in the world. He co-opted one because the Black Panthers started the breakfast program. Matter of fact, SNAP and those programs that feed kids was based on the Black Panthers breakfast program because they started breakfast programs in major cities, and then they began to move to other areas because they were able to produce the evidence of how breakfast in the morning improved the learning habits of the children. And when Jesse did not get the leadership and SCLC, that's when he organized the Rainbow Coalition, and that's when his Rainbow Coalition picked up on the breakfast program that the Black Panthers were doing. it was at that period the Black Panthers program was waning because they were killing the Panthers up, putting them in jail. So, but anyway, like I said, our history is very convoluted, especially in this country. I'm
This
done.
is Charles. I do remember that part because Black families coming together. They got organized. They did do what you said. And not only did that, they kept watch out on their people, and they never did slow down on what they did.
Um, what they did, they there were groups in every major city who did neighborhood patrols from dusk to dawn. And in DC in particular, there was the highway strangler, and someone was killing black girls and leaving their bodies on the highway. And the group that I worked with, we started patrolling the neighborhoods from dusk to dawn. And the murders slowed and then they stopped. We never really saw the person who was doing it, because when they arrested somebody, it was all of a sudden it was quiet. It was out of the news. But there were several different people who did that, and that was done, like I said, all over the country. But it did begin with the Republic of New Africa was one of the groups who we worked with in DC, and they were the very first ones to begin doing that. And the one that we had, it morphed. It morphed from rat patrol, because in the housing projects there were rats big as cats, and we got a grant to rid the neighborhood of rats. And when we had to do the patrolling in our neighborhoods, we pulled that same crew back together as patrols. So all of this stuff is intertwined. It's extremely difficult to separate the Nguzo Saba from everything else that took place. What you don't get in our history is a written understanding of what the Black nationalist movement was about, because they took the safe people and wrote their stories the way they wanted them to be, as opposed to what really happened. And they avoided mentioning the people who were at the helm of the Black nationalist movement and the things that were done with that movement. For example, there was a march, African Liberation Day march in DC. And we went to, we had a meeting in Greensboro at African African school in Greensboro. And we decided that we were going to do this African Liberation Day march. And it was also decided that we in DC were responsible for the logistics of it. Those kinds of things that you don't hear anything about. the National Black Political Convention that was held in Gary, Indiana. You don't hear things about that. The racist incidents in Cairo, Illinois, when the policemen had a crow's nest on top of the police station, and they were firing a 50 caliber machine gun into the black neighborhood. Plus, there were policemen on the train tracks, on stationary cars that were just randomly firing into the black neighborhood. And when we went to Gary, Indiana, and left some things, and that stopped all of a sudden. If a man knew a rabbit had a gun, he wouldn't hunt rabbits. So that ended that. I remember when we were on our way out there, we stopped at a service station, and when we got into Cairo, just before we got in, rather, on the bus, and the bus driver would not go into Cairo, Illinois, so they had to get another bus. We had chartered a bus to go out. And when we got to the hotel, the maid told us, "Don't stay here," because the rooms that they were going to give us had dynamite in them. So we stayed with Hank Sanders was the state senator, and we were going there to help him. But those kinds of things never get mentioned at all. So, but there's so much to talk about in the history that's attached to the Nguzo Saba that we don't get. We've talked about African beginnings. We talked about how we came to where we are in terms of slavery, etc. We've talked about the civil rights movement, but we've never talked about the Black nationalist movement. But maybe one day we will. I'm done.
May I ask
Hey,
a
Pastor,
question?
before
I'm sorry. I can see
go
Charles.
ahead. You can go right ahead. I'll still hold it when you get back on.
Sage, out of curiosity, did any of the movements ever join together? Or that never happened?
I was the spokesperson for 7 different groups in DC.
Okay.
So that's the thing that you don't get either. If you read the history of it, you will only get fragments. But yes, there was the groups, the Black nationalist groups were very, very influential. For example, when we went to Gary, Indiana, to form the National Black Political Convention, 98% of the people were Black nationalists, but you don't hear that. You hear, Walter Fauntleroy, who was a member of SCLC and the non-voting delegate for Washington, D.C., but you don't hear about Doug Moore, who actually led the delegation. And the position paper from D.C. were written by Black nationalists. And as a result, my job was to write our position paper on Israel. And I wrote it, and when Doug presented all of the different positions that we had taken on policy to the convention, most of it was adopted. And when we got back to D.C., the IRS had this little sign on the door, so he could not go back into his store because they did an audit on him, and it took him 2 years because they were trying to put him out of business, because that's where we would meet in his store, and they made every effort to put him out of business because, see, Doug Moore and and Patrice Lumumba were friends, and he he was broken when Patrice Lumumba was murdered, and but he still had contacts, and that's where he received his stuff from in his store. And when we would meet there, we would do sweeps because we knew that they were trying to bug the store because we met there. So we did sweeps to make sure it was clean. And in 2 years after they finished the audit, people came back to him more into his store, had more customers than before because they knew what the Internal Revenue was trying to do. I hope that answers you, Vermeil. I know I gave you more than you asked, but
No.
it's hard to. This is the first time that I've been able or been in a position to talk about the things that were done in our history in this country that has not been written about. I spoke with Al a few weeks, no, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and well, Al was one of the guys who I work with, and he wanted to talk to me about when I could come because we're gonna try to put it in book form, and we already have. Elsie's gonna write it for us once we give her the notes that we are going to put together, so that this hopefully can be in book form. Because right now, when we die, it's gone. Because I mean, most of the guys are already dead. So, matter of fact, the film I went to in D.C., he was one of the people who we worked with. He was our grant writer.
Wow.
But anyway, Charles, Vermeil, if that help you, then I'll go to Charles.
It really does, and I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to seeing that uncovering of truth. It's done a lot for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. If you were to go to the archives at what is called University District of Columbia (UDC) and search for the archives, read the newspaper at Federal City College, you will find a great deal of this history that I'm talking about in those papers.
Thank you.
If you go to the archives at Howard University, it's it's sparse, but it's there. And if you go through the archives of the radio station at Howard University, then you will hear interviews from a lot of us because we kept things alive in D.C., Northern Virginia, and areas in Maryland by virtue of doing interviews on Howard University radio station. Charles.
Tell me about the Panther was doing and taking care of their people. Now the Muslims,
Well, let me stop
the
you.
Muslim,
No, Charles,
okay,
let me stop you for a moment. Please don't say they are people. They were taking care of our
I
people.
said,
Our,
okay, our people. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying, the Muslims was already organized. Why they didn't coincide and do the same thing? But they just worked on who was Muslim.
well, the Muslims did a lot in the community. That's another thing. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad's group did quite a bit of things in the community. The Muslim restaurants were the only restaurants that were purely organic. They raised their own food in Utah on a farm in Utah, Iowa, one of them, and they trucked all the food all over the country. But as far as teaching, they had their own school, and they were teaching kids uh, algebra at what 6, 7 years old, and all the kids came out of the school with they came out of school at least bilingual. And as far as the communities are concerned, when a Muslim moved into apartment complex, the projects, and they actually moved into different areas of the black community, that's when drugs dried up in those communities that they lived in, because they went straight to the drug dealers and told them, this is not what you want to do. And they knew exactly what that meant. And drug dealing dried up in their complex. And that happened complex after complex. However, the FBI drove a wedge between Malcolm and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They drove a wedge between them. And as a result of that, Malcolm ended up being assassinated because of that. And the FBI lied because the FBI, they lied about being involved in it. But you could find the records online, if you search for them, that proves that the FBI was involved in what happened with Malcolm and the division that they created. When I was doing the speech at Barbara Scotia College, and then I went to I came down to Charlotte to Johnson C. Smith to do a speech, and Louis X was there at the time, and he and I did a Q&A after the messages were delivered during the course of that week. And the guy who was Louis X, who was with me, who I was with, however you want to deem it, is now Louis Farrakhan. That he was Louis X before he became the right-hand man to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he became Louis Farrakhan. So, and we had disagreements, of course, but this is how the movement of Black nationalism worked. Everybody interacted at some point, and it's funny because back in the day, if you had not been through Federal City College, you were not considered legitimate. And what I mean by that is that Federal City College was an African nationalist school, period. Everything in that school was related to Africa. And those teachers who did not see the importance of doing that, they were not there long. We had teachers to leave NASA. We had teachers to leave with the space folks. All those folks, the major places in the government, and some of them were security spaces to teach for us. We had a lady who had just graduated from college. She has a position in Iowa, and she left a very lucrative position in Iowa to come to Federal City College to teach. And this is the lady who's supposed to be writing putting our information in book form. So, but Filter City College was the Mecca. It was considered the Mecca of African nationalism, and that's why they quote unquote merged it and moved it up on the Gold Coast. I'm done, Ron.
Thank you, Pastor, for clearing that up.
Thank you, Charles. Thank all of you, matter of fact, for your questions.
Okay. Any follow-up questions, comments?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Reb, I got a question and a statement toward the group. When Mr. Charles asked the question about the Black Panther Party, MC Hammer is a product of the Black Panther Party because he comes out of Oakland, and he went bankrupt. And he went bankrupt physically. However, he had a large entourage, and out of that entourage, he has produced, his energy with his art form has produced 5 or 6 registered nurses. He's produced Division I assistant coaches. And that was his answer when they asked him, or when Oprah asked him, why do you do what you do? And his answer was, I'm a product of the free lunch program with the Black Panther Party. The other thing that I want to add, and what I hear you saying, Reverend Richard, and just processing in it, that era of African American, based on my information, y'all didn't scare easy. And when you look at today's climate with the African American male, we scare easy. And I remember one time you said, and someone confronted me on this, hey, George, why the white man not scared of the black male, yet is scared of the black female? And in today's era, I see black women, not all black women, they may be viewed as the weaker vessel, yet what cancels that weaker vessel out, they don't scare easy. So the black female who does not scare easy, that's pigeonholed as the weaker vessel, she's going to accomplish, she's going to cover more ground than the black man from seminary, highly educated, bada bang, bada boom. So
Let me speak to that, George, if I may. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. You when you said that, Reverend Richard, I don't know if you remember that, but you said that the white man is not, does not fear the black man. If you can expound upon that pretty much, but go ahead. Thank you very much.
First of all, when you said the black man was afraid of the white man, but it's not the black male was afraid of the white man in terms of the physicality of it. The black man knew what the white man would do to him. There were several men of African descent who were set up and charged with rape of white women. There were African men who were set up for bank robberies, drug dealing, that were not doing it. That was the concern. But as far as the fear factor it's not that we didn't scare easy. We weren't scared. Wasn't scared. Period. During the period of the Black National Movement, if you were not resolved to giving your life for what you believed in, you could not work with us. Because when we worked in the Deep South, there was a guy named Ali Bakri. He went to Albany, Georgia with us. and the Klan passed the house a couple of times threatening um, our lives. And he couldn't sleep at night, so we sent him back to D.C., and he never worked with us again. Um, we were not afraid of anything, period. And it may have been our naivete because we were so young, but I chose to believe that it was our commitment. As far as our women are concerned, let's be clear on something. When we met, we meaning Stokely Carmichael, Doug Moore, the Black United Front, the Republic of New Africa, the Black Vanguard, we met. And in that meeting were members of the Black Panther Party. And if their females had something to say, they would have to tell that male and speak through the male. And it pissed us off because they were rendered totally submissive. And we ended the meeting and we never met with them again. When we met, we never met with the Panther Party because of that, after that. But so when it comes to that aspect of it, the Panthers, it'll depend on the chapter you were in. Because in California, the primary move in the Panthers in California was Angela Davis. So, and well, that's another story for another day when we talk about Angela Davis. She was extremely influential in the Black Panther on the West Coast. The East Coast Panthers were different. Yet they did the same in terms of feeding people. This is what I want to get clear in everyone's mind. The Panthers never killed any policeman. Panthers never killed anybody. They never fired on anybody. The guns were for self-defense. And when a rabbit knows you got a gun, a rabbit don't shoot at you. If a man knew a rabbit had a gun, you wouldn't taunt him because the rabbit would shoot back. They did not shoot anybody. When Fred Hampton was murdered, Fred Hampton was murdered because of what he was doing. There was an FBI informant who worked closely with Fred Hampton. And Fred Hampton was organizing poor white people and poor black people. And he was forming a coalition, not only with poor people in Arkansas or in Chicago, but poor white people in the South. The whole idea of the Poor People's March came from Fred, was similar to what Fred Hampton was doing. Fred Hampton, when meaning the police, the FBI found out what Fred was doing and how effective he was in doing it, the informant gave them the layout of the house and told them where the weapons were kept. And not one round was fired from the inside of that house. When they riddled the house with bullets before they went into the house, and Fred Hampton was lying there on the bed. He was breathing, and they shot him again to kill him. They murdered Fred Hampton. And when you think about, I think he was like, 20 years old, most of the people in the movement at that time were around that age. We were very young, but we were very sophisticated in what we were doing to bring our unity to our communities and to protect our communities. Angela Davis had she was accused of freeing some Panthers from the courtroom. In other words, breaking them out of jail. And she had to go on the run. And of course, she lived underground for quite a while. And when she went back to California to be tried, she defended herself and won. But there were others who were like Eldridge Cleaver, who ended up in Cuba because they had been set up by the FBI. And today's people, you don't have to do what we did. What we did in the physical laid the foundation for what we are doing every week. It is the African, the children of Kabbalah in this country who are the spiritual, who are the spiritualists for the Africans in the diaspora. And those who are still on the continent, they are the spiritual economic group. When the spiritual brings into existence the Cabelonian community in the diaspora as well as on the continent, it has to have, once it has a spiritual government, it has to be financed. And that's what's taking place on the continent now, with it primarily Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, along with some other countries like Namibia, Rwanda. But anyway, I want us to understand that the reason, the fear of the Black woman by that European mindset is they know who the Black woman is. And they have done something that we fought like the Dickens, and that is they have convinced Black men that Black women don't respect them. And because of that, they have created division, and Black men start treating Black women like white men treat white women, and that is dominant, and with the expectation of them doing whatever they told them to do. And it's very difficult for some Black men, especially of this era, to have respect for the Black woman. And this whole idea of the Black woman always wanting to know what you bringing to the table. That's a myth that was introduced back in the day and to this day, up to this day, by the FBI and the news medias had created this division. And sad to say, Black men in particular bought into it. And I have no qualms about saying that. And as far as MC Hammer is concerned, he was a product of the breakfast program, but his entourage was far from being a Black Panther, that's for sure. So his entourage was very different. You should read the history of his entourage or understand, if you know, it's funny. Anybody who knows the beginning of hip hop knows about MC Hammer's entourage. I'm done.
Now, Reb, I agree with everything you said, and I'm kind of familiar with his entourage. They wasn't nothing to play around with now.
No,
Yet I do admire the fact that those guys that were bank robbers and would kidnap people, look, you don't have to do that no more. Learn this dance routine. Well, you don't know how to dance? Carry my bags for $100,000 a year. So I agree with you. He never got extorted going in Detroit, New York. He never, because of his entourage. Yet I just admire the fact of he toured out the country.
he was dangerous.
Okay, though, Red.
With George, he was dangerous. You didn't play with him. Let's just admit that.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I'm just speaking about some of the good that he did do. That's it, Red. That's it.
Maybe I'm old school. But if your own people fear you, are you doing them any good? If your own people cross the street when they see you coming, do they respect you or fear you? And if they fear you, then you are a wing of the white capitalist society that seeks to create fear in our community. But if we have to fear the ones who look like us, that's a serious problem. So anyway, I'm a proponent of the black lady at 12 midnight getting off from work, walking home, crossing the street to walk with a black male to make sure she gets home safely, as opposed to seeing the black male coming and crossing to the other side of the street. I'm not familiar with that in terms of being personally in the space of a black woman at that time of the night. They looked for us because they knew that they were going to be escorted home safely, as opposed to what we see now. It's a big difference. That's all I'm saying. Huge difference. And it's not pretty at all. That's all. I'm done. Any questions or comments? Because this is not what I thought we would be talking about today, even though we are. Obviously, the ancestors desired us to hear the other side of the story.
I have a question because I agree. I don't think that this is an accident to begin to kind of get into the political. And I remember you teaching us before that the political strategy was never the right answer. So from where you sit now and your wisdom, what strategies are we employing now as we begin to do this work spiritually?
The strategy that we employ now is spirituality. And what I mean by that is understanding our spiritual origins and our spiritual presence. One of the most important things that we have ever done was acknowledging the presence of our ancestors. Another important thing that we have done, matter of fact, I would put it at number one, and that is acknowledging the divinity of the female, the womb of Akebalon. Without that, there's nothing else to be birthed. If the womb is barren, you birth nothing. But recognizing the womb and respecting it for what it is and what it was created to be, the womb is no longer barren. And it begins to birth those things that we need to understand to know who we are. First of all, well, another thing I should say, the black body appears to be human only, but because of the melanin, is more than human. The body looks like it's human, but the melanin says otherwise. And it seems that a large percentage of people other than us recognize that. And here we are walking around being ashamed of or minimizing our embracing of the melanin of being black. Black is an organism. Black is life itself. And if you really, really want to get to the nitty gritty of it, when you look at the earth and how it has moved throughout history, you will see that black is life. And the European is death. And the objective of what we do to bring a change to this political environment we live in is to embrace the life of blackness. Because when you do that, you are embracing spirituality. And that mindset of the whole world is to be shifted from that mindset of the European. And that is the greatest political move that could ever be done that will benefit the whole of humanity. And because it is spiritual, if you want to attach that word to politics, it's spiritual politics. And everything is based on the principles of Ma'at. Everything's based on the divinity of the first people on this earth. Everything is based on this divinity being dominant so righteousness can rule in the earth. I hope that helps, Regina. Because I've been through it. I've seen it all. I've been involved in the civil rights movement for as long as I can remember. And when I got older, it was the Black Nationalist movement. I'm trying to think, there was a paper. When I grew up, there was a newspaper that was printed in Baltimore, and it was distributed all over the country. And I was trying to think of the name of that paper. But anyway, I grew up reading a newspaper. I grew up reading.
Was it the Pittsburgh Courier, Reverend Richard? Forgive me for interrupting.
Oh, no.
Pittsburgh?
This is Black newspaper out of Baltimore. It was printed and published in Baltimore and was circulated all over the country. But if I remember the name of it, I'll mention it so you can research it for yourself. Another source to understand is the old copies of the Ebony magazine with the articles in it written by Lerone Bennett, who wrote Before the Mayflower. He was a lecturer at our school too. Does that help, Regina?
It does. I guess my thought is going toward if we were to exercise the Nguzo Sabo, these principles physically, what could that exercise look like with that level of discipline?
You're asking about, let me see if I'm right. about the what would a political society look like that's based on Nguzo Saba? Is that what you're
No,
asking?
sir. No, sir. Really pushing beyond the political side. Like I said, like pushing us to where we are today and where we need to walk today, knowing that the politics is not necessarily the answer, is a reverberation of the spiritual misalignment.
You're right. Politics is not the answer. Um, Politics is not the answer as politics we are familiar with. The answer is a type of politics that is inclusive and protective of all of humanity. If you read the structure of communities in a Kabbalah, especially of Kush, before the interaction with Europeans, that is the system that we are headed towards. And the foundational structure for the economics that supported that system is the Kabbalah, the minerals in the ground. Right now, regardless of where you go in the world, any economist would tell you, even a capitalist would tell you, that the only real money that exists is gold and silver. And that value to gold and silver was given by the inhabitants of Akebalon. The paper came into play when the gold was kept in vaults. And in 74, when America left the gold standard for its to back its finance, his money, it truly became simply paper. In reality, the U.S. government is broke. It has zero money. When it talks about borrowing money to sustain itself, that money that it supposedly is borrowing is borrowed from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, of course, is a private bank that owns America. If you look at the results of what happened in 1930 with the recession, the country went bankrupt, and the Federal Reserve became the trustee of this country, and the collateral for the Federal Reserve of the people of the country. If you really look in depth at how the economic system is set up, this country has $0. Every penny that you pay in taxes, 40% go to the debt of the Federal Reserve, regardless of what kind of budget they pass. This country would never be out of debt to the Federal Reserve, the private banks. There are 12 central banks around the world. And 3 of them are in New York: Amsterdam, Hamburg, Berlin, London, Italy. And if you notice that this country has never attacked a country that has a central bank in it, because the central bank is the one who makes money off of the war, of fighting wars. And if you notice, the war has been against people of color ever since World War II. After World War II, it's been the Korean War, Vietnam War, all of them against people of color. And that's how the Federal Reserve makes its money, from the defense industry and from our taxes. Because as I said, the United States of America is broke. And when Lincoln, see, most people think that Lincoln was killed because of having freed us. There were men who were making efforts to establish a central bank in this country, actually before the Civil War, and definitely after the Civil War. And Lincoln fought it. And as a result of that, he was killed. Kennedy. People think Kennedy was killed because of the Cuban crisis. He was not. In June of '63, Kennedy wrote an executive order that said the notes that America would print its own money. And he had a note of the United States of America at the top where you see the Federal Reserve now. And that lasted until November 22nd, '63, when he was assassinated. And the first thing Johnson did was cancel that executive order. I mean, literally, the first thing he did once he was sworn in was cancel that executive order. And that executive order is still there. Any president can revive it, but they're not going to do that because they know what happened to Kennedy. So the Federal Reserve, the United States government, borrows money from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has the federal government to print its money. The Treasury prints the money for the Federal Reserve, and the U.S. government borrows money from the Federal Reserve to pay the people who print the money. And the Federal Reserve does not pay the printers to print the money. The federal government borrows the money from the Federal Reserve to do that. I mean, it's ridiculous the way the system is set up. So when you talk about this nation and what it looks like in regard to the people, in order for the system to work, there has to be people who are poor. I mean, literally living in poverty in order for the system to work. What happened is a class system was set up. Even though we don't want to talk about it in those terms, the people who are in poverty are trying to get to the people who are in the middle, that they call the middle class. But they make sure that that doesn't happen. So, and the people in the middle class are trying their best to not be poor. And now both are struggling against each other, and the division is created. And those who are at the top of the scale in terms of currency, owning currency, not money, currency, are the ones who benefit from the battle between what is called the middle class and those who are in poverty. But the true winners are people like the Warburgs, the Rothschilds, Lehman Brothers. They are the Goldman Sachs. These are the real people. These are the people who control the finances of the world. Chase Manhattan, economics is boring, but if you dig deep into the true structure of how the economy of the world operates, you will see that it operates based upon. I guess it is boring. A couple people just drop, but it really is boring. But you see how why things are the way that they are. And what people don't know is that the Federal Reserve owns everything. ABC, NBC, CNN, all of it, every bit of it. Uh, the the people, how can I put this? Uh, and when the Federal Reserve was brought into existence in 1913, it came into existence on Christmas Day, and only one senator was in Congress that cast that vote to make it what it is. Hard to believe that one senator was there. Everybody else was gone. And the person who pushed the hardest for that central bank, a guy named Nelson Aldrich, he is the grandfather of the Rockefellers. So the ownership of the central bank here is, of course, the offspring of the Rockefellers and a guy named Jacob Chase. That's where Chase Manhattan came from. Jacob Chase. Yeah. Anyway, enough of that, I guess, unless there are questions about it. And I never intended to get into this depth of discussion about the central bank and how it affects this country and how it affects us and who is really pulling the levers when it comes to going to war or controlling the resources of Africa. I'm done.
So, Pastor, based on Regina's question, that politics no longer works. It really has never worked, and what we should be doing now. And you talked about the spiritual nature of what we should be doing right now. So, I guess my question becomes: you sent something to us that Ibrahim Touré was speaking on of a black winter that is coming. And as he spoke of the Black Winter, he was saying that we have this final opportunity as a people to unite and to walk in our spiritual power so that we can set balance to that. And if we fail to set balance to everything by not coming together, that we will forever remain slaves. Now, when I first heard that, I thought of slavery as we knew slavery to be, not even realizing that you have been enslaved to the European mindset, the rule of money, and all the different things that have entrapped us now and enslaved us, and the things that we're fighting, like you said, the middle class is fighting to not be the poor class, and all of these different things. All of that is a form of slavery as well. So based on Regina's question, would part of the answer also be, or the main answer basically also be, that the uniting in power of who we are spiritually, the coming together, the diaspora with Africa and everyone, all people of color coming into unicity and understanding the power in which we walk in, that's the policy that we are moving toward, but it's a spiritual policy. Or am I seeing that totally wrong?
No, you said it totally right. Everyone in America who's not a billionaire is enslaved. It's just that simple. And it, be frank with you, even the billionaires are in slavery. They're enslaved by the paper they carry. Maybe this would be the last thing I say about economics. The reason that Gaddafi was killed is because of the currency that he was introducing or desired to introduce to Africa. And the reason they could not let that happen is because the currency was going to be backed by the ground that they walked on, what was under their feet, all those minerals. When, not if, when the leadership in Okebalon takes control of what's under their feet, establish a central currency, that will render the dollar useless. This is what I'm saying to you. When the Okebalonians take control of Africa and is no longer 54 countries with 54 different currencies and 54 political views, when it becomes 54 states under a central leadership body, and it has control over all the minerals on that continent, the day that that happens, the $1 billion that you have is useless. It's not even worth the paper it's printed on. Because, again, real money is silver and gold and all precious minerals. That's what real money is. Because from the beginning, it was gold that was used as currency. Even in this country, it was gold coins. People were paid with gold coins, with silver coins. And that is why silver coins, gold coins are so valuable. If you look at the $2 bill, it has silver note on it. It redeemable at any bank. If the money, the paper you have in your pocket does not say that it is redeemable, then it is worth no more than the paper on the pad that you're writing on. It's just that simple. And that is the reason they are fighting so hard to assassinate Ibrahim Traoré, because he is leading the movement. And like I said the other day, the last count that I have heard about attempt to assassinate him, it was up to 25 in just a few years. They thought that they would have accomplished that goal by now. The other part of that is this. There are the OPEC countries. 90% of the money for the OPEC countries is in dollars. Countries is in dollars, and it is banked in the U.S. It is in New York, and the banks in the U.S. You can't buy oil anywhere around the world unless you use dollars. That's why they call it petrodollars. Now, all of those petrodollars would be worthless once the currency on the continent is unified. Oil really is not precious at all. It is made precious by those who control it. The Saudis don't control their oil. The U.S. does. Why do I say that? Because the only way that you can freeze someone's assets, you must have access to them. And with 90% of the petrodollars being in this country, the assets of any OPEC country can be frozen and the country will go broke. That's the kind of stranglehold that the central banks, in particular the bank in this country, has on the world. Every currency on earth is valued by the U.S., and the U.S. has absolutely nothing to back the value that they apply or assess to the paper that they print. They have nothing to back that other than guns and a will to use them. So it is essential that we remain the spiritual shield that protects the leadership in Okabelon. The leadership that seeks to unite all the children of Okabelon. This is not to destroy anyone. It is to benefit everyone, as opposed to a handful of people who are manipulating everything in the world. The 13 families that runs this world will no longer be able to do it when the United States of Africa becomes, or manifests rather, as the reality in our times, or as a result of what we're doing spiritually. Does that help, Kathy?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else, no other questions, I'm done.
Okay. I'm just waiting. Anybody else? Any questions, comments?
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not rushing you at all.
Okay.
Because I believe that this is purposeful. The ancestors decided to show us or to talk to us about the African nationalist movement was a continuation of the slave rebellions that took place from the day that we were enslaved in this country. The civil rights movement was a movement to be assimilated into a society that was never built for us to be a part of. But the Pan-Africanist / African nationalist movement was totally different than the civil rights movement. Yet it worked with the civil rights movement. Their goals were different. Is that clear? Or does it make sense to you guys? Not rhetorical. Please respond.
It does.
It does. It's
It
clear.
does. Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
As you were speaking about economics and the system that we're currently living under with the federal bank and all of that, I was kind of stepping through the seven principles, and they're completely I can't even pronounce the word.
Antithetical.
It's the complete opposite. Yes, thank you. The complete opposite to what we're living under.
Absolutely.
There's so much about cooperation and working together, using your talents and your creativity to improve your community, and taking care of each other. Like that, they read to me as spiritual principles, even though the celebration may have come from a recognition of our culture. Like they, I don't know.
Well, Janice,
I see a lot in that.
it is a lot. But look at this. The first principle is the emotion. Emotion.
Mhm.
Emotion in Swahili is one. That's the number one.
Right.
Emotion. The first principle is unity. None of this works without unity.
Right.
That's why Umoja is the first principle. The unification is not that everyone is on the same page. The unification is that the majority of the people have the same goal. And that goal has to be a spiritual awakening that is already taking place with us. It has to be a spiritual awakening before it can influence the physical environment of our existence. And the spiritual awakening, we are spiritually awake. And as a result of that, what we teach are principles to awaken the descendants from Akabalon. And while this is happening, at the same time, there is also an awakening that connects or sees the connection between the physical world and the spiritual world, seeing the unicity of those two. And the physical aspects is governed by what's in the ground on the continent. The spiritual assets is guided by our ancestors through us who teaching in this country. And let me see if I can make it a little bit clearer. We have been through hell in this country and still dealing with that. The ancestors guide us spiritually because the resolution to everything that's going on is spiritual. The protection for everything that's part of physicality is spiritual. So when we see the connection there, when we see that the children of Akabalon in the diaspora as well as on the continent are one body, a one spiritual essence, a one spiritual, a one divine entity, that these black bodies are not just human, but they are the power of life itself. When we see that and embrace that, what happens over a period is we see a manifestation of the principles. You don't have to fight a physical battle to do what we are doing. Even though, because of the greed of that European mindset, there has to be a physical battle that takes place to protect the inhabitants of a cable line, as well as the resources of a cable line. Why? That was not a war that was entered into against the Europeans when they colonized when they colonized the continent and its resources. There was no battle. And that's why they were able to do it. But now that there is a spiritual component to this, it's not going to happen like this ever again. Once the European mindset is minimized or brought to a place where it doesn't exist, either way, it doesn't matter. When that manifests, everything spiritual is ready or to become more visible to the eyes. Now it is visible to the eye, but it become more visible to the eyes as a manifested goal for the benefit of humanity. That's the best I can put it, I think. Unless there are questions to help clear that up. Otherwise, I'm good.
I don't
I
know
got,
if we'll this will be real quick, Ron. I don't know if we'll have time, but I'd love to go over the principles individually at some point. I'm not necessarily saying today,
Maybe we can do it tomorrow.
but I think that would be worth our time. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a good idea as well.
Yeah, we can do it tomorrow.
Okay. Good discussion. Anyone else? Thank you. Very informative.
Thank you.
I hope everyone has had great family time and hope it continues, and we look forward to tomorrow then. If we don't have any further questions or comments, we good?
We're good.
Okay,
Thank
excellent.
you, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your
Thank
day.
you.
Bye, guys.
Me too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.